I think it's a good time to talk about this game called Delta Force Urban Warfare, considering a brand new Delta Force game is set to come out sometime soon, which is a multiplayer game. Which, again, I think it's a good time for me to talk about this one, and I do have two other Delta Force games, both on the Xbox and the PS2, but I haven't played enough of them to say what I'm talking about. So, considering I played most of this one and actually beaten it, so I think it's the perfect time to say, let's go dive right into it. So Delta Force Urban Warfare is originally a PS1 exclusive that came out in 2002 from Rebellion. So you play as this guy who has tasked to do some missions, and the gameplay kind of feels similar to the kind of like how GoldenEye and Medal of Honor plays. Now the best way to play this game is just use the dual analog controls just for the best experience. And I say that because if you guys are just going to play with a standard controller with just a D-pad, it's just going to be complicated with the whole control schemes. So the game has its own like mix of between action and stealth missions. So what I'm trying to say is that there's always going to be these missions where it forces you to go in combat, or at least they recommend you do all stealth. But if you guys are going to play missions like the bank, then you have to be stealth, otherwise you're just going to fail the mission. And you can't kill some of these people either in those bank missions because they're civilians, and the only way to really knock them out is either to use a taser or maybe just knock them out in general. But that's really all I can really tell you about that one. And yeah, that's like one of the main missions that like can become hard if you don't know what you're doing. So I do have like one complaint about this game, that's the shotgun. The shotgun is the weakest weapon of any other weapon I've used in the game, and I have no idea why. Even if I was close range with the shotgun, they still take at least like 2 or 3 hits to kill. Like, it just makes no sense to me. So it always questions me what are these developers doing with these shotguns as of late. They're supposed to be the most powerful weapon in the entirety of these games, but it seems like nobody cares about that. I should also mention too that there's going to be missions where it requires strategy, and the reason I say is because there's a sniper mission after you beat the first mission that you gotta take down all the enemies in the ship, but the only problem is you don't know where they're at, so you use your night vision and then you look into the scope and you see where the enemies are, but again, you really have to come up with strategy. It's considered to be like one of the hardest missions because if you get caught, then you're gonna get shot out of thin air and you don't know where they're gonna be at, so you got to plan accordingly. Another reason why I'm saying this is because that sometimes there's gonna be civilians during a mission, so if like you kill them by accident, then the mission's gonna fail, and there's no checkpoints, but it doesn't really matter because the levels are pretty short to begin with, so that's kind of like why there's no checkpoints to begin with. So how many levels does this game even have? Well, they have over 10, so at least that's enough for you guys to do something. Also, the game was later re-released as part of the PlayStation 1 Classics catalog for the PS3 and the PSP. And I'm sure that despite no one ever talking about this game, considering when I tried looking for reviews of this game, nobody ever talked about this one. Also, it's one of the cheapest games you can get on the PS1, so it's not really that hard to track down. By the way, I should also mention the soundtrack too. It's been composed by Third Strike. Oh, and I got a funny story about this game too. I was trying to pick up an item, but everywhere I tried to do, I couldn't pick up the item that I needed to do in order to complete this objective. But it turns out, I think, because, well, I didn't have an instruction manual, so you can't really blame me. I think the only way to pick up certain items is if you use a button combination. So, I don't know, it makes no sense to me if you think about it, considering you have the DualShock controller, which means you should have enough, everything to do. I mean, just go buy it and pick it up itself automatically, like, certain games do, which I don't know why they didn't implement that sort of thing. But overall, I actually had a pretty fun time playing this game, and I think you guys will too. If you guys play games like GoldenEye or Medal of Honor, I think this is a game that you guys should definitely get if you guys are into that. But I should also mention too, you have your little gadgets that you can also pick up and, use them. Maybe like throw a grenade or You can also lockpick the door. All you have to do is just run by it, and the thing will tell you that you're pick locking the door, and then after that, you're all set and the door opens. But you will need some key items to like progress through the missions, like a key card for example, and it really depends too. Also, I don't think that many games does this, but this is actually one of the first few games I noticed that you can actually pick up an enemy walkie-talkie and you can see what they're up to, like if they need backup or if there's a coast clear, so you know when you're safe. Now, if you guys don't have like a PC, then this is a game that you should really try to start with, and then make your way to the original Xbox and the PS2 versions, which are different games. It's not. I'm not saying this game has different versions. Again, this is a PS1 exclusive that came out in 2002. You know, came out 2 years after the PS2. So there's like after like system like came out, like there were still some PS1 exclusives going on despite that, like C12 Final Resistance, the XS series. It's crazy too how these late PS1 games managed to come to the PlayStation Store as well. So overall, I think you guys will enjoy this game despite a few flaws that I've seen of the game.